Confidence. It is a word that dominates our culture, our careers, and even our personal lives. From motivational speakers to business leaders, from social media influencers to best-selling authors, confidence is painted as the ultimate key to success. We are told that if we simply act confident, the world will believe us, and in believing, it will grant us respect, opportunities, and power. But behind this modern obsession with confidence lies a dangerous misunderstanding. What if most of what we are taught about confidence is merely an illusion? What if the loudest voices, the boldest personalities, and the most flamboyant displays of self-assurance are not signs of true confidence, but rather masks, fragile disguises covering insecurity and fear? This illusion of confidence surrounds us everywhere. Think of the charismatic speaker who commands attention with a booming voice, yet behind closed doors feels paralyzed by doubt. Consider the aggressive manager who uses intimidation to project control, but in truth fears losing authority. Or the influencer who carefully curates every detail of their image to look untouchable, when in reality they are desperately chasing validation. These examples reflect a truth. Confidence, as we often see it, is performative. It is a show designed to convince others, and sometimes even ourselves. But it is not real strength. To truly understand the power of confidence, we must look deeper than surface appearances. And one of the most provocative thinkers in history, Niccolò Machiavelli, offers us a path to that deeper understanding. Living during the turbulence of Renaissance Italy, Machiavelli studied power not as an idealist, but as a realist. He stripped away illusions, examined human nature as it is, not as we wish it to be, and revealed truths that are as uncomfortable as they are enduring. His insights about leadership, influence, and control challenge the shallow ways we view confidence today. Machiavelli understood something critical. True confidence is not loud, it is not flamboyant, and it is not reckless. Instead, it is quiet, calculated, and deeply rooted in inner stability. It does not need to shout to be heard, because its presence is felt without performance. It does not need to dominate others through fear or aggression, because it commands respect through composure and clarity. True confidence is less about convincing others and more about mastering oneself. But why is this distinction so important? Because when we mistake performance for authenticity, we begin to follow the wrong examples. We admire those who appear unshakable on the outside, ignoring that their inner worlds may be fragile. We confuse volume with authority, impulsiveness with courage, arrogance with strength. And in doing so, we set ourselves up for disappointment, because illusions inevitably collapse under pressure. When life tests us, when challenges arise, when setbacks strike, and when uncertainty surrounds us, performative confidence shatters. Only the genuine form endures. The illusion of confidence thrives because it is easy to imitate. Anyone can raise their voice, puff up their chest, or plaster on a smile. But imitation never builds resilience. It never creates the deep foundation of stability that true confidence requires. And this is where Machiavelli's philosophy becomes so crucial. He forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that power without substance is fragile, and confidence without depth is doomed to fail. Consider for a moment how society rewards appearances. In politics, in business, and even in everyday interactions, those who appear confident often gain trust and opportunities quickly. But appearances alone cannot sustain influence. When decisions must be made, when crises strike, or when reality cuts through the performance, only those with genuine strength remain standing. Machiavelli would argue that relying solely on appearances is not just risky, it's reckless. Because appearances can be imitated, manipulated, or destroyed in an instant. Substance, on the other hand, cannot be faked. This brings us to the heart of the problem. Most people chase the illusion of confidence because it is easier and more socially rewarded in the short term. But true confidence, the kind Machiavelli hints at, requires discipline. It requires self-mastery, patience, and the ability to remain steady when emotions pull us in every direction. It requires the courage to accept reality as it is, even when it is harsh, and the foresight to act with reason rather than impulse. This is not the confidence of motivational slogans or Instagram quotes. This is confidence forged in the fire of self-control and sharpened by experience. So as we begin this exploration, we must confront a difficult question. Do we want to look confident, or do we want to be confident? One path offers temporary recognition, applause, and external validation. The other offers lasting strength, respect, and inner peace. Machiavelli's writings suggest that only the second path leads to true power, because only those who have mastered themselves can hope to influence others effectively and sustainably. The illusion of confidence will always be tempting. It is easy, it is seductive, and it delivers quick rewards. But its fragility is exposed the moment reality intrudes. True confidence, on the other hand, may not always be glamorous or flashy, but it endures. It does not depend on constant validation or external approval. It is built quietly, patiently, and deliberately, and when it is tested, it does not break. Now we have peeled back the surface to see the first glimpse of what confidence really is and what it is not. Next ahead, we will dive deeper into Machiavelli's perspective, exploring how his philosophy of power reveals the single most powerful trait of truly confident individuals. But for now, let us carry forward one essential idea. Confidence is not the illusion of strength. It is the reality of control. It is not about how loudly you can declare your power, but how steadily you can hold it when everything around you begins to fall apart. This is the difference between those who crumble under pressure and those who rise above it. And as Machiavelli understood, it is the difference that separates leaders from pretenders, strength from weakness, and illusion from truth.
To understand what true confidence means and why it differs so dramatically from its many imitations, we must turn our attention to one of history's most controversial yet brilliant thinkers, Niccolò Machiavelli. His name has become synonymous with cunning, manipulation, and ruthless pragmatism. But to reduce his work to mere deceit is to miss the essence of his insight. Machiavelli was not a preacher of immorality. He was a diagnostic of reality. Living in the unstable world of Renaissance Italy, where city-states constantly shifted alliances and leaders fell as quickly as they rose, Machiavelli observed human behavior with a clarity that few before or since have matched. And at the core of his philosophy lies a truth about confidence, power, and character that remains as relevant today as it was 5 centuries ago. In his most famous work, The Prince, Machiavelli argued that effective rulers could not afford to live in illusions. They had to see people not as saints or heroes, but as flawed, self-interested beings driven by ambition, fear, and desire. To govern such people required more than charisma or appearances. It demanded calculation, resilience, and an unwavering grasp of reality. It is here that we begin to see his perspective on confidence. It is not about projecting strength outwardly, but about possessing the inner discipline to master circumstances, no matter how unstable or threatening they may be. Machiavelli's Italy was a world where leaders who relied on bluster and theatrical displays often met swift downfall. He saw princes who mistook arrogance for authority and lost their states because they could not control their impulses. He saw others who relied too heavily on appearances, on seeming generous, bold, or merciful, only to be exposed when their decisions were tested by war, betrayal, or crisis. From these observations, Machiavelli concluded that genuine power cannot be built on illusions. It must be anchored in character, in the ability to adapt, endure, and remain steady when fortune inevitably turns. This idea may sound simple, but it is profoundly challenging. For Machiavelli, character was not a matter of lofty ideals, but of practical strength. A leader's true worth was measured not by how confidently they spoke, but by how effectively they acted, when confronted with chaos. Confidence in this sense was inseparable from prudence, the ability to weigh circumstances, anticipate dangers, and remain calm while others panicked. The truly confident individual in Machiavelli's eyes was one who could appear composed even when storms raged around them, because their confidence came not from illusion, but from preparation and self-mastery. We must remember that Machiavelli lived in a world of constant instability. Foreign armies invaded, conspiracies brewed, and fortune seemed to swing unpredictably from favor to ruin. In such a context, relying on appearances was not only dangerous, but fatal. A ruler who confused performance for substance might enjoy temporary applause, but he would inevitably be destroyed when reality intruded. Machiavelli's counsel, therefore, was not merely cynical advice for personal gain. It was survival strategy. To endure, one needed a confidence rooted not in external validation, but in the inner capacity to remain steady and decisive. This philosophy forces us to rethink what we often admire in leaders today. Modern society still celebrates bold speeches, charismatic gestures, and dramatic shows of confidence. But as Machiavelli would remind us, these external signals mean little without the substance of character behind them. A leader who can charm a crowd but cannot manage crisis is no leader at all. A person who dazzles with self-assurance but collapses when tested is not truly confident, but merely a pretender. True power, as Machiavelli understood, comes from the quiet, often unseen strength of self-control. What makes Machiavelli's view so compelling is his insistence that character is revealed not in times of comfort, but in moments of trial. Anyone can appear confident when circumstances are favorable, when fortune smiles, and when the path forward is clear. But when uncertainty looms, when allies betray, when enemies strike, and when the future seems dark, that is when true confidence shows itself. It is in these moments, Machiavelli believed, that a ruler's real character is tested, and where the difference between genuine strength and hollow bravado becomes unmistakable. Take, for example, Machiavelli's concept of virtù, often misunderstood as simple virtue. For him, virtù was not moral goodness, but the quality of strength, adaptability, and foresight that allowed a leader to shape events rather than be shaped by them. It was the fusion of courage and cunning, decisiveness and patience, boldness and restraint. And at its core, virtù required confidence, not the loud, boastful kind, but the quiet assurance born of preparation, self-discipline, and an unshakable grasp of reality. To possess virtù was to embody true confidence because it meant being able to act decisively without being enslaved by impulse or blinded by illusion. Contrast this with what Machiavelli called fortune, the unpredictable force of luck or fate. While fortune could lift a man to power, only character and confidence could keep him there. Those who relied solely on fortune or on appearances inevitably fell when circumstances changed, but those who possessed the inner stability of virtù could weather storms, adapt strategies, and maintain control even when fortune turned against them. Here again we see the essence of true confidence. It is not dependent on favorable circumstances, but is resilient enough to endure unfavorable ones. In practical terms, this means that confidence is not an act, but a discipline. It is cultivated through patience, strategy, and the willingness to face reality without flinching. Machiavelli's leaders did not waste energy on pretending. They invested it in preparation. They did not seek to appear unshakable, they sought to become unshakable. And this distinction, though subtle, makes all the difference. Because the one who only appears confident can be broken by pressure, but the one who is confident in truth cannot be. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Machiavelli's view is how it applies beyond politics into every area of human life. In our careers, our relationships, and our ambitions, we too face instability, betrayal, and uncertainty. Like the princes of Renaissance Italy, we may be tempted to rely on appearances, to project confidence outwardly while neglecting the deeper work of building it inwardly. But as Machiavelli would remind us, reality eventually unmasks illusions. When challenges come, and they always do, it is only those who have cultivated inner character that remain standing. To understand Machiavelli, then, is to confront an uncomfortable but liberating truth. Confidence is not about how others see us, but about how we anchor ourselves. It is about building a character strong enough to withstand the storms of fortune, adaptable enough to adjust to change, and disciplined enough to resist the temptations of illusion. It is about mastering ourselves before attempting to influence others. And in this mastery lies the essence of power, because only those who govern themselves can truly govern anything else. As we move forward, we will explore in greater depth the single most powerful trait of truly confident individuals. But before we uncover that trait, we must keep in mind what Machiavelli teaches us here, that power without character is fragile, and confidence without substance is a mask destined to fall. True confidence, as he saw it, is the quiet, unshakable force of a person who has learned to rule not only over others, but over themselves. And that, above all, is the foundation upon which real authority and enduring influence are built. Up to this point, we have explored the illusions of confidence and Machiavelli's sober perspective on power and character. Now we arrive at the heart of the matter, the single most powerful trait that defines those who are truly confident. It is not arrogance, not flamboyance, not domination, and certainly not recklessness. The most powerful trait of the truly confident is self-control, the capacity to remain calm, measured, and deliberate even when the world around them is unstable, hostile, or chaotic. Self-control may sound deceptively simple. After all, it is easy to nod along to the idea of remaining calm under pressure. But in practice, it is one of the rarest and most difficult abilities to cultivate. Human beings are driven by emotion, by impulses, by the primal instincts of fear and desire. When threatened, we lash out. When excited, we leap without thinking. When angered, we speak before we reflect. This is the natural state of man, and Machiavelli understood it with crystal clarity. To rise above this natural state, to discipline the self so thoroughly that one can act with calculation rather than reaction, is the very essence of true confidence. Consider what happens when someone lacks self-control. They may appear confident in moments of ease, but when confronted with real adversity, they collapse into panic, anger, or despair. Their decisions become erratic, driven not by reason, but by emotion. In contrast, those who embody self-control project an aura of strength that cannot easily be shaken. They radiate a quiet assurance that steadies those around them, because people instinctively trust leaders who do not lose themselves in chaos. This is why self-control is the most powerful trait of the truly confident. It transforms not only the individual, but also the environment in which they operate. Machiavelli, ever the realist, understood that leadership and influence depend less on how loudly one speaks and more on how consistently one acts. He warned against the dangers of impulsiveness, of mistaking recklessness for courage. The leader who rushes blindly into battle may inspire for a moment, but he will likely lead his people to ruin. By contrast, the leader who exercises self-control, who pauses long enough to assess, calculate, and choose wisely, builds lasting authority. His confidence is not shaken by shifting fortune because it does not depend on external circumstances. It is rooted in the discipline of his own mind. This is not to say that self-control means passivity or hesitation. On the contrary, it is what allows decisive action. Without self-control, action is reckless, a reaction to fear or desire. With self-control, action becomes strategic, guided by clarity rather than confusion. Think of a seasoned general who, when battle rages, does not panic at the noise of war, but calmly studies the battlefield, seeing patterns others miss. His soldiers look to him and draw confidence from his steadiness. He may not shout the loudest, but his composure speaks louder than any cry could. This is the kind of power that Machiavelli admired, the authority born of self-command. Self-control also carries immense psychological influence. People are naturally drawn to those who seem unshaken by circumstances. When others lose their temper, the one who remains calm appears stronger, wiser, even unassailable. In politics, in business, and in personal relationships, this dynamic plays out constantly. The person who does not react emotionally but responds with clarity gains respect, trust, and often power. Machiavelli saw this truth in the rulers of his time. Those who endured were those who did not let their passions dictate their decisions. Their confidence came not from illusion, but from mastery over their own impulses. At its deepest level, self-control is the art of separating external chaos from internal stability. The world is unpredictable, fortune changes, enemies plot, crises strike. But the truly confident individual does not allow external instability to dictate inner balance. They remain grounded, and in that groundedness lies their power. This trait is what prevents leaders from making rash mistakes under pressure, what allows individuals to hold steady when others crumble, and what creates an aura of authority that cannot be faked. Let us look more closely at why self-control is so rare and so powerful. Most people live as slaves to their emotions without realizing it. They mistake anger for strength, impulsiveness for courage, and desire for ambition. But self-control sharpens perception. It creates space between impulse and action, allowing reason to prevail where instinct would otherwise dominate. It is this space, the pause before reaction, that defines the truly confident person. In that pause lies clarity. In that clarity lies strategy. And in that strategy lies enduring strength. Machiavelli would argue that the person with self-control is also the one most capable of navigating fortune. Since fortune is fickle, one must not cling too tightly to success nor despair too deeply in failure. The confident individual accepts both with equanimity, neither inflated by praise nor shattered by criticism. This balanced response is only possible through self-control. Without it, one becomes a puppet of external circumstances, soaring when fortune smiles and collapsing when it frowns. With it, one remains steady, adaptable, and therefore powerful. In modern terms, think of the executives who remain calm during market crashes, the negotiators who maintain composure during tense discussions, or the athletes who thrive under pressure when the stakes are highest. These individuals embody the principle Machiavelli outlined centuries ago. Their confidence is not loud, but it is undeniable. It commands respect because it is authentic, rooted in discipline rather than performance. And just as in Renaissance politics, those who possess this trait today often rise to positions of influence not because they seek attention, but because their steadiness makes them indispensable. The contrast with false confidence could not be clearer. The pretender may dominate a room with charisma, but the moment stress mounts, cracks appear. Their voice rises, their decisions wobble, their mask slips. Observers may not always articulate it, but they feel it. This person is not truly in control. The aura of confidence collapses. The truly confident, however, grows stronger under pressure. Their calmness in adversity reassures others, solidifies trust, and often turns potential disaster into opportunity. This is why self-control is not just a personal virtue, but a social force, shaping how communities, organizations, and even nations respond to crises. It is also worth noting that self-control does not mean suppression of all feeling. Machiavelli did not advocate for emotionless machines. Rather, he emphasized the need to govern emotions, to channel them strategically instead of being controlled by them. Anger can be harnessed into determination, fear into caution, desire into ambition, but only if discipline stands at the helm. Without discipline, emotions drive us blindly.
With discipline, they become tools in service of a greater vision. This transformation is the hallmark of the truly confident individual. The cultivation of self-control is no easy task. It requires relentless self-awareness, the humility to recognize one's impulses, and the strength to resist them when necessary. It demands practice, patience, and often failure before mastery is achieved. But once developed, it becomes the most unshakable foundation of confidence. While appearances can be imitated and charisma can be staged, genuine self-control cannot be faked. It is revealed in moments of stress, when the mask falls away and only reality remains. And in those moments, the difference between true confidence and illusion becomes undeniable. So when we ask, what is the most powerful trait of the truly confident? The answer is clear. It is the ability to master oneself before seeking to master others. It is the discipline to remain calm when storms rage, the clarity to act strategically rather than impulsively, and the resilience to endure when fortune shifts. This trait is not glamorous, but it is enduring. It may not win applause in the short term, but it builds legacies in the long term. As we continue this journey, keep in mind that the confidence Machiavelli described was never about noise, spectacle, or illusion. It was always about control. The control of circumstances through the control of self. Those who embody this trait are not just confident, they are unassailable. And that, above all, is the true mark of power.
We have uncovered the illusions of false confidence, examined Machiavelli's piercing insights into power and character, and revealed the most powerful trait of the truly confident, self-control. Yet knowledge without practice is little more than an ornament. To complete our exploration, we must ask the practical question: how can we apply these lessons in our own lives? How can we take Machiavelli's observations and transform them into strategies that build authentic, lasting confidence? And finally, what conclusions can we draw about the nature of true power in a world still captivated by illusions? The first step is to recognize that self-control is not a talent one is simply born with. It is a discipline that must be trained and strengthened, much like a muscle. Every day presents opportunities to practice it. When confronted with frustration, do we react immediately, or do we pause to reflect? When challenged, do we lash out defensively, or do we respond with composure? When temptation appears, do we give in without thought, or do we measure the long-term consequences of our actions? Each of these moments is a test, and each test is an opportunity to reinforce the foundation of true confidence. Machiavelli would remind us that confidence cannot be built on fantasy. It must be forged in reality, through the difficult work of mastering one's impulses. This begins with awareness, the ability to notice emotions as they arise. Without awareness, we are captives of impulse. With awareness, we create space to choose. And within that space lies the difference between weakness and strength. The practice of self-control, then, is not about suppressing emotion, but about guiding it with reason. Fear can inspire caution, anger can fuel determination, and desire can drive ambition if they are governed rather than allowed to reign unchecked. One practical technique is the deliberate cultivation of silence. In a world where voices compete to be heard, the ability to remain silent is often underestimated. Yet silence is not emptiness. It is a form of control. By speaking less, we conserve authority. By observing more, we gain insight. Machiavelli knew that a ruler who reveals too much through words weakens his position, while one who masters the art of silence commands attention when he finally speaks. In our daily lives, this practice translates into restraint, resisting the urge to respond immediately, especially when provoked. It is in the pause that clarity emerges, and it is in clarity that confidence is built. Another aspect of practical self-control lies in balancing emotions under pressure. Consider a heated negotiation. The insecure individual may react emotionally, revealing weakness to their opponent. The truly confident person, however, maintains composure, concealing their vulnerabilities while projecting stability. This composure is not an act, it is the result of disciplined practice. Breathing exercises, meditation, journaling, and deliberate reflection are modern tools that help cultivate this balance. Machiavelli may not have spoken in the language of mindfulness, but he understood the principle. Control your inner state, and you will control the outcome of outer events. Confidence also grows from preparation. Many mistake confidence for spontaneous bravado, but in truth, lasting confidence is built long before the moment of challenge. The military commander trains endlessly before battle. The speaker rehearses before taking the stage, and the strategist anticipates contingencies before crises arise. Preparation fuels self-control because when circumstances turn chaotic, the prepared individual does not rely on improvisation alone. They have rehearsed responses, considered outcomes, and built a reservoir of inner assurance. Machiavelli observed that fortune favors the prepared, not because luck is guaranteed, but because preparation transforms uncertainty into manageable risk. True confidence, therefore, is less about innate courage and more about the discipline of readiness. What does this look like in practice beyond the theory? In leadership, it means prioritizing steadiness over showmanship. Leaders who cultivate self-control project reliability. Their teams trust them not because they shout the loudest, but because they remain calm when storms arise. In business, it means making decisions not from a place of panic or greed, but from calculation and foresight. In personal life, it means refusing to be carried away by momentary emotions, instead choosing actions that align with long-term values. In every context, the principle remains the same. Those who master themselves create a foundation for influence that others cannot easily undermine. Of course, the temptation of illusion will never disappear. Society will continue to reward appearances, at least in the short term. There will always be those who equate confidence with charisma, volume, or dominance. And indeed, such displays may bring temporary gains, admiration, applause, perhaps even fleeting authority. But as Machiavelli warned, illusions collapse under pressure. The mask cannot endure the weight of reality. Those who rely on appearance alone inevitably crumble when tested, exposing the fragility behind the facade. Recognizing this, we must resist the easy path of imitation and instead embrace the more demanding road of discipline. The beauty of self-control is that it does not depend on fortune, on applause, or on external validation. It is a strength that grows silently within, impervious to circumstance. While appearances fade, self-control endures. It becomes a source of resilience in adversity, of clarity in confusion, and of authority in uncertainty. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Rulers rose and fell, but those who governed themselves stood the test of time. In our own lives, the same principle applies. True confidence will not always be glamorous, but it will always be durable. As we conclude this exploration, we return to the essential contrast between illusion and reality. Illusion promises quick rewards, but offers no substance. Reality demands discipline, but grants enduring strength. The most powerful trait of the truly confident, self-control, is not a performance for others, but a mastery of the self. It is the quiet force that steadies the hand in crisis, that keeps the mind clear in chaos, and that commands respect without demanding it. Machiavelli's legacy, often misunderstood as cynical manipulation, is in truth a call to realism. He invites us to strip away appearances, to see the world as it is, and to govern ourselves accordingly. His lesson for us is timeless. Those who seek to rule others must first rule themselves. And those who achieve this mastery will discover that confidence is not noise, not spectacle,
not illusion, but enduring control, discipline, and strength.